You need it. That's the main thing.
Just like, that's where there was 30 minutes and there wasn't a single word spoken. It was just total. Three hours and nothing to motion.
So it worked for 3 hours.
I thought it was pretty good. There was one little flaw.
Really?
Yeah, all the stuff they did there.
I am. My wife's
It helps to watch the one.
Okay.
she had a 3-day stay at
Have
the
hard.
hospital.
Okay, that's
She's got a
so it's his last one.
really bad. I'm in the middle of something about it again. Yeah.
Just what, 7 or 8?
Yes, she did. We're in the process of
I've got 6 o'clock on my clock, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Huggins,
Here.
Lane,
Here.
Templin,
Here.
Martin, Milburn,
Here.
Meadow, here, Schultz.
Here.
Commissioner Martin is absent today.
Thank you. Moving on to our agenda, item 3A, approve the planning commission agenda. Any changes, corrections, modifications to be suggested? Motion?
A motion, we approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is adopted. Item 3B, approve the minutes of the planning commission meeting held on April 22nd, 2025. Changes, corrections, or additions?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. They are approved. Item 3C, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Anything on the agenda tonight to disclose?
Nope.
Okay. Item 3D, disclosure of outside communications regarding commission business. Anything on the agenda tonight that you've had discussions? Okay, seeing none. Moving to item 4, the call of the public. Members of the public who wish to address the planning commission regarding items not on the agenda may do so at this time. Any presentations for informational purposes only. No action will be taken. There's a 4-minute time limit. Anyone like to address the planning commission tonight? Please come up to the podium, give us your name and address. Don't all come at once. No one online?
Correct.
Okay, with that, I'll close the call to the public. Moves us to item 5A, a rezoning of 8550 Kill Creek Road to R1A. Matter is a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have before you is a rezoning request at 8550 Kill Creek Road to R1A. I might add that this will be our first R1A application in the city, so there you go.
I'll bite my tongue.
Did go through the perfunctory steps as far as notifying newspaper, putting up signs, notifying the public around the site. Haven't heard from anyone on this particular rezoning request. This is kind of an interesting location as far as the tract itself. It is an address that faces Kill Creek Road. However, the back of the lot, as you can kind of see in the aerial there, has the golf course in the background, and then to the south are the duplexes, which are zoned commercial for some reason, and then across the street are R1. But nonetheless, these areas here are all residential in nature, and you can see there's plenty of space between the duplex and the property line on this tract. So don't see any conflicts between the proposed R1A and the duplex use to the south of this particular tract. The reason the applicant asked for the R1A in this district is really for the setback reductions themselves. It has nothing to do with the ability to develop the tract, but under the RO, we have a 50-foot front setback, 50-foot rear, and 25 on the sides, which would make this tract essentially unusable. So it gives them flexibility to put the house on there. Probably still have to use some piers in the back, but the flat area in the front would most likely be where the septic and lateral fields would be. So it would make it a more developable lot than under the RO designation. Now, it also, I mean, the standard things that we'd go through as far as size of the home, it has our minimum requirements, so changing to R1A does not give them any leeway as far as putting up a lesser structure than what our current code allows. So it just gives them a little more flexibility to basically take a lot that's unusable under the RO zoning designation and make it something that could be developed into a single-family residential unit. With that, I'll run through some of the briefly the categories of the zoning compatibility factors, character of the neighborhood. I basically touched on that as far as the residential use nearby. Compatibility, the proposed zoning is also positive as far as staff is concerned. Land use plan and the uses in the area are residential in nature. And then with the golf course to the west, certainly is a buffer between this potential use and the RO, and that's what the golf course is zoned, is also RO. Suitability, which it's restricted under its existing zoning, I touched on that. It's the reduced setbacks that allow the R1A, or why that's the preferred rezoning category. It basically takes a lot that's undevelopable and makes it essentially usable under the R1A designation. Utilities on the site, since it is over 1 acre, they can't have a septic system, so that is, and there are not sanitary sewers available in the area, so that would be the route they'd have to go, but then there is water and electric on the site. So utilities are available at this proposed location. As far as the proposed zoning would adversely affect the safety or the portion of the street network, yes, there would be an additional curb cut, but it is far enough from the duplexes that staff can also work with making sure it kind of aligns with the residences across the street to not create any confusion in that area. Environmental impacts, don't see that there'd be any significant increase in potential for environmental harm with this rezoning request, and don't see any significant change as far as economics of the proposed zoning. It's not something that we need a whole lot more of, is large lot housing, but once again, this is what the applicant has requested and does make a lot that was not usable, potentially usable. Relative gain of the public health safety from the denial of the application, don't see that there'd be any interest in the owners of the nearby residences, and certainly haven't got any comments from them during the period in which they could have approached for a protest petition or something along those lines. And also it is consistent with our comprehensive plan showing large lot residences basically east of Kill Creek, other than sort of the carve out for Arbor Ridge, because there are sewers available on those locations. So with that, recommendation of professional staff is to approve this rezoning, and as you know, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, who makes the final decision on this issue. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brad. Questions for Brad?
I had a general question. I don't know if it's so RO, I was just thumbing through it, RO says that it's around 12,000 square feet.
Yeah, the minimum lot size.
Minimum lot size 12,000 square feet. It's got this 50-foot setbacks, and then what was the other piece that I thought was interesting in there? 120-foot, 100-foot length, minimum length on the lots.
Frontage, yeah.
On frontage. My question was going to be around like, if we end up zoning a piece of land that is too small for the zone that it is, should that be a call out when we do it, when we zone it that way? Like, it seems like, wouldn't we set ourselves up to have to rezone this if we had, whenever we did it as RO initially? If we're saying that it's really not buildable as RO?
Well, I don't know the history of this. Was this lot, it was always a lot as it's currently?
Yeah, I remember
configured?
looking at, times the duplexes have come up a few times, and I've
Okay.
looked at it on Ames and go, wow, and actually, there's actually a couple lots farther north along Kill Creek as well. And those are completely, I don't care what we rezone them, it goes right from the curb almost straight down the,
Yeah.
Do you know how wide that, or depth of it is from the street to the?
yeah, I don't
tree line?
recall, John,
No, I was looking towards the tree line because it drops off pretty good at that tree line. I just couldn't
yeah,
figure out
but
where
I
that
did play
was.
around with just a couple shapes to see if you could get a minimum, 1,100 square feet is our minimum house size, and you can get one to fit there. It'd be more, certainly basically a ranch, longer and narrow as it would come,
But with that
probably.
drop off, where would you put the septic in that thing?
Well, as I understand it, they want to put the septic in front where where that flatter area is. Now, they might have to do a different sand mound or some sort of different type of septic system, but, that's for them to figure out and work with the building official department on how that could work or not. But as far as the rezoning itself, septic really doesn't come into play. We just look at it as it's got a minimum of 1 acre, and that meets our requirement for septic.
What is the acreage? 'Cause I don't
It's
think-
around 1.3 acres.
I didn't see it anywhere in the packet.
When I looked it up, I think it's like 1.03 or 1.13 something.
It's
Yeah,
gotta
it's-
be barely over one.
Yeah, it's barely.
Has anybody proposed a project for that lot?
I have talked to the applicant, and they have not proposed anything specific other than the only
Sounds
thing
like
they
we
can do
got
is an R1, is a
Folks would
residential
like some
unit.
public comment time, and that's what we
Okay.
have here. Anybody else have any questions for Brad before we open it up to the public hearing?
No, thank you, Brad.
Okay.
So this matter is before the commission as a public hearing. If you'd like to make a comment or share any thoughts, please approach the podium, give us your name and address. Perhaps not. Still no one online?
Is there a cliff? Is there a cliff between the road and?
I'm sorry, sir. For the record, we have to get your name and address and ask you if you could come to the podium. Thank you.
Okay. Alan Penny, I live at 8635 Kill Creek Road, which is more or less across the street from that lot. Is there a cliff between the road and the creek?
There's certainly a drop off there.
Drop off, okay. And I've noticed that there's deer that kind of go across the road about that location. They're rather well behaved. They kind of look both ways before they cross the street. And I would almost think that it'd be appropriate to put a deer crossing sign in the area somewhere, but just a thought. And I had a couple of other things, but I didn't bring a piece of paper up here with me, so. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Penny.
Thank you.
else for public comment? Okay, well, I'll close the public hearing at this time. Matters back before the planning commission.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I did look at this map here, and it does show the south property line is 254 feet in length, and then on the north, it's 101. So
Right.
there's a fair amount of distance in there that's,
Yeah, the question is, at what point does the cliff come in there?
yeah.
Because that does take a pretty steep. Did you probably weren't around for this, but the house that's down at the bottom of the hill there at Shorewood where it takes the curve, that was originally built by Fred Farmer. And I remember Fred years ago complaining about the septic from when they put in the duplexes. They'd increased the water flow down that hillside to the point that he was getting a bunch of water down there. Now, I haven't heard anybody complaining about that since Fred left, so I'm gathering whatever the issue was got addressed, but I suppose to the extent there is an increase and to the extent they put their septic closer to the road, maybe it's not a big issue, but I just wonder whether that's a concern about the water flow. You know, it's pretty, I'm guessing it doesn't perk a whole lot along that cliff.
Yeah, so familiar with that house, the farmer's house there. It's in a floodplain. I mean, it's in a flood-prone area to begin with. But as far as runoff coming from the construction of the duplexes, I wouldn't think that the septic systems would be contributing to that.
Well, I'm not saying that Fred knew what he was talking about.
But construction of the homes certainly could have. You know, it increased impervious surface, and it certainly could have contributed to increased runoff from there. Yeah. Haven't heard anything recently though.
Okay.
And I did just pull up on the screen here. So this is the lot, and these are contour lines. So the closer they are, the steeper. And you could call that a cliff. Yeah. But you can see up by the road. Essentially, the area that's mowed is flat. You can kind of see the relation of the steep area to the road here on that.
Any other comments, questions?
I mean, I think this is a good infill rezoning, and I concur with staff's professional opinion on this one. So I'd be in support of this one.
I see this Kill Creek's designated arterial roadway. I wonder how much right of way there is there now, and is there any idea of expanding that to meet what an arterial road standard might require? Would that be taken into account?
Well, certainly, but I think that would come up, and I don't know that just because we make this change, it's gonna make, this lot's gonna be buildable. As you can tell, the road doesn't appear to be centered particularly well within the right-of-way, so there's gonna be some work that's gonna have to be done with the architect and when the plot plan goes to the building official for approval. But your point's well taken. That lot, even with the reduced setback, because they still with the R1A, they got a 25-foot setback in the front, so.
Brad, am I reading right what Mike just highlighted there, that the road is actually farthest to the left of the right of way already?
Yeah, you always caution people, don't take this literally, because
Right.
sometimes the aerial image can get shifted from the property lines, but there has been over time some kind of curious overlay of the right-of-way with this surveyed, and so it could be that the road is not centered in that right-of-way here.
Got it.
I know closer to the intersection of 83rd Street, there's kind of a question there, but it's not, don't take this map. It's
As a
gone.
general rule, it should be centered though, is what you're
General
saying.
should be centered, but in general, it's not surprising if it isn't.
Clear as mud, thank you.
So what is the setback for an RO?
From the road, it's 25 feet from the property line, from the buildable property line. So the road,
So
Right
I'm
away
trying to
is-
understand why the difference here with this. It's the setbacks is why we wanted to go to an R1A with it?
yes.
Because the setbacks in the RO are what?
50 feet in the front.
So they're 50 feet. And the neighboring properties are C2, so they wouldn't have fit that anyhow, probably. I'm guessing.
Yeah, and that's curious to me why the duplexes are C2, but that's just the way it is.
I kind of remember that, actually. I don't think I was on planning commission at the time, but I kind of remember that. Or maybe we talked about with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, they were built in '99, so.
Yeah, so it would have been around.
Just out of curiosity, how did they get put on C2?
I
I
don't
remember
know.
when they put them in there.
Okay, other comments?
Yep.
Motion?
I make a recommendation that we concur with staff's recommendation to rezone this to R1A. As we said, this is a council decision, correct? We're making a recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Templeman,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddox,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you. Item 5B, rezone north of K10 and east of Evening Star to C2.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On May 15th, DeSoto City Council annexed 5 parcels of property owned by Clairview LLC. 3 of those are being requested to be rezoned C2, and they total about 80 acres of property, and they are just north of Evening Star Road and adjacent to K10 Highway. I did want to point out, interesting, there is a very small triangle that somehow was breached, K10 Highway, so there is, and that is actually one tract, even though the highway cuts off the corners. So that will actually be rezoned C2 as well. Certainly the applicant is, I'm hoping the applicant is talking with Flint Development, how they can just either donate or sell or come up with
Wow.
an arrangement to take that and remove that. But nonetheless, that's where we're at with this situation. Once again, went through the standard procedure in this case because it's adjacent to county property or unincorporated Johnson County. We did a 1,000-foot notification for the tracks and also did the notification in the paper and sent out letters to nearby residents. I have spoken with several residents about this property or this and the upcoming rezoning. And one has asked for a protest petition and how to go through that process. So there is some interest by the residents on how this is going to affect them in the near future. And once again, this is one of those things we've been dealing with a lot lately as DeSoto's expanding with development. It's moving into the rural areas, and we have situations like this where we have to notify members of the area that are in unincorporated Johnson County and then ask them to participate in the process through the public hearing. One thing that we want to talk about is what can you do in the C2 district? And I pulled this straight out of the city code. It said automobile implement sales, lumber yards, contractors yards. I think it's more likely to be some sort of retailing service, mini marts, those type things. But certainly there's a lot of different uses that are allowable in the C2, and that's what you have to consider is all the uses, not just something. Now, nothing has been proposed, nothing has been brought forward to city staff. It's just at this point the applicant, who is in the audience tonight, GW Weld, owns this property. And so they're requesting that these 3 tracks be rezoned to commercial. And this is consistent with our comprehensive plan. Jumping ahead a little bit there, Mr. Chairman. Once again, the zoning compatibility factors, as you can see as I go through these, It can be very similar to the upcoming rezoning process. We know that this area is transitioning from rural residential to commercial. We have rezoned property south on Evening Star to commercial and also light industrial. So, and we've rezoned property on 95th Street and 103rd Street to different uses from RUR, which is the county's designation. And these carry the county's designation into the city, and so that's why the applicant needs to request a rezoning to move forward. And it is really the first step in the whole process. Compatibility of the proposed zoning therein with the uses of nearby properties. We talk about this a lot. The site plan is going to be part of this process that moving forward. This is just the rezoning. Certainly the designation for buffering and the site plan and noise attenuation, also lighting, all those types of things are much more critical when you have a commercial next to a rural use. So we'll certainly be looking at that very closely as city staff and making sure that there's adequate buffering these adjoining properties. Suitability under, or is it under its, could it be restricted, significantly restricted under the existing zoning? The area could not be developed in a commercial sense under the RUR designation. So that's why the applicant has requested a change from RUR to C2. The property's been pasture and does lack infrastructure, and so therefore there's not been any proposed land use change since the highway was put in. So extent that there's a need within the community. Now we have looked at all these things. Part of our growth process is to find ways for economic benefit, and because we're looking for ways to expand our tax base with retail types uses, this is something that we are certainly looking forward to in DeSoto, and this has been part of our comprehensive plan and our land use map in the future for this area. Availability of required utilities. This will be served by Rural Water District 7. There are no sanitary sewer lines in this area. There is electrical service available. As you know, the Evening Star interchange has been improved, but the northbound section is still a very rural gravel road. So it's not ready, and that's why it gets a negative for the utilities in this area. But this is something we've gone through on a lot of these rezonings as the expansion to the west primarily has happened in DeSoto. One of the things also to note on the next items, not all the tracks have direct access to Evening Star, but they are under one ownership. So the site plan, and when we go through that process, we'll make sure that all tracks have access to Evening Star Road. So gave that one a neutral. As far as the environmental impacts, part of our process is stormwater detention, lighting, all those types of issues that we look at during the site plan to make sure they're mitigated as best possible for the residents of the area, and to also just be environmental stewards of the property as best possible. And I would note that we've rezoned many tracks in C2 recently in DeSoto that have had these issues with the utilities or lack thereof. And it's part of the process. It's the first step to moving forward to a growing and more vibrant community that has greater retail activity or potential than what we have right now. And then, of course, the residents nearby could detrimentally affect their property as far as north of Evening Star and then 95th Street would be most impacted by the development of this property. Consistency with the comprehensive plan, the future land use plan. As I've said many times, it is consistent with what we've looked at. Now, we haven't spent a lot of time studying north of Evening Star Road, but it's now with the improvements to 103rd Street and Lexington, this is now, and the interchange itself is now a much more desirable location. And because of the transition of this area from rural residential, staff is recommending to the Planning Commission to approve this rezoning request. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions you may have. And as I mentioned, the applicant is here in the audience tonight.
Thank you, Brad. Questions for Brad?
So Brad, you said they're rezoning 3 tracks.
Correct, and the fourth one is R3, and then well, I'm not counting the little triangle pieces, but, because there's also another one a little bit farther to the north that's gonna be rezoned potentially to R3, but there is a smaller, about a 10-acre tract that was not part of this application that was annexed into the city, and that tract is at this point gonna remain RUR.
So this piece on the southeast side of the highway is actually a portion of the tract as the county identifies it with the one.
That is
that's-
correct, yes.
That's why we're saying 3. So even though it really makes no sense to do that C2, since it's all part of one tract, that's why we're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the county is listed it, so that little triangle piece has the same tax ID number as the bigger piece on the north side of the road.
That said, we have rezoned portions before.
Yes, and you can rezone portions of tracks, so.
That's your question.
Yeah, I surrounded by industrial, and I totally isolated from any access. I don't.
Oh, yeah, it's a completely
why that would
unusable
be.
tract.
I guess it's just another step we'll have to take someday in the future.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. It's part of, I believe, the Flint development kind of drainage area, so even if it was zoned light industrial or even given to Flint, they couldn't do anything with it. It's just part of that drainage system. I think the culvert crossing is right near there, underneath K10.
Thank you.
How would these tracks get sewered? Do they flow to the southeast, or how would ultimately that be done? Has that
Just
been looked
about
at?
north. They flow almost directly north.
Oh, okay.
So there would have to be a sewer solution implemented, probably a pump station. that
Okay.
Pumps it somewhere in the interim. Or we have a kind of a region-wide sewer master plan that has a interceptor sewer going north all the way to the railroad and then along, but I think that's decades off.
Okay.
Other questions for Brad? Thank you, Brad. The matter is a public hearing, so anyone from the public who'd like to speak as to this issue, please approach the podium. Give us your name and address.
My name is Jerry Donlin. My wife and I live at 9825 Evening Star Road. The tracts of land that you're looking at changing the zoning on are going to be butting up against the back end, or I guess it would be the east border of my property. There's 3 of us right there, and we've got a total of 10 acres tied up. I'm in the middle one. Each one of us is 110 foot wide and a quarter mile deep. Now, this development, if you approve it and it starts, I mean, I heard, mini mart, retail space, stuff like that. Commercial development can mean a lot of different things. And right now, there's a big battery plant going in less than 3 miles from my house. I have no idea what type of toxic waste they're going to produce, how they're going to dispose of it. But as far as commercial development, if this is approved, can whoever's going to develop that, are they free to put manufacturing or the receipt, handling, storage, and distribution of anything potentially toxic or hazardous to the environment?
It shouldn't be permitted in the C2 zoning, which is what this is, as opposed to an industrial, which would be the M1s. So what you're talking about is an M1.
Okay, well, I appreciate you said it shouldn't, but would they, if they were going to do something like that in developing it, would they have to get prior approval for that, or would it just fall under their commercial development free to do what they want?
So if commercial development is not free to do what you want, it's got to fit within the parameters. The parameters are, as were generally described, they're largely commercial uses and is distinguished from industrial. Industrial uses, typically, they can't just do what they want to do there either. They have to get a special use permit for the kinds of uses you're talking about. So I don't know that the C2 designation is maybe as open as maybe you're thinking it is in terms of them just saying, well, I can do whatever I want to do. It's limited to those commercial uses, primarily retail.
So if they were to apply for a special use permit, they'd have to get it from you folks?
They have to go through council. But the special use permit wouldn't permit that in this zone anyhow.
Okay, now, the multifamily dwellings, is there any limitations on that? Is it apartments, duplexes, townhouses?
So I think you may be talking about the next rezoning request. At this point, we're just talking about
Oh.
the C2 request. So hold
Okay.
that thought until we get there.
All right, well, then I'll be back up again.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll read this to you. So C2, permitted uses are general, automobile and implementation sales, lumber yards, contract yards, offices, neighborhood retail, and similar uses are permitted. For general listings of permitted, conditionally permitted used by a North American Industrial Classification System, NAICS, permitted uses will be determined based on compatibility. So essentially, if it's not one of those things that they said, it's generally not going to be accepted in there. And even when they are going to ask for to build something, they're going to have to run through a permitting process and make sure that it's all kosher. So we may not be the governing body that approves if it's a special use that doesn't fall under that, but either way, a site plan has to come through here.
Okay, where are the access points for that proposed commercial development? I mean, from K10 to where the end of that corner is up there. How many access points are they going to have? And I've got another concern because how many big trucks are going to be running in and out of there and up and down our road, tearing up the road? Who's going to take care of the road?
So those are excellent points, and they're points that would have to be dealt with in terms of a site plan. The question is this an appropriate use of the property at this location? That's the issue before us today. And so you've got 3 tracks that border the highway with an exit ramp, and the question is that an appropriate place to put a commercial use? So those are the kinds of questions we deal with. As far as what they actually build, those come up in site plans, those come up in their plats. The issues that you're talking about in terms of access and how they build it out. And all of that's going to be premised also upon how do you service it in terms of getting sewer there, because we don't even have sewer there yet.
Right.
So the question is this an appropriate use at this location as opposed to an industrial use, or as opposed to, more intense residential or large lot residential? What's the appropriate use? That's really the issue.
Well, that sewer was my next question because we're on septic.
Right.
If they put sewer in out there, what are we going to have an option of tapping into it, or will it run clear down north to 95th Street? How far will the sewer go?
Great question, and one we probably don't have an answer to yet, because we aren't there. We don't know.
But that would be a prerequisite for them to develop. Well, we'll have to figure that stuff out before they get a building permit, even though we don't have it figured out today.
So before they get the building permit, that will have to be in their plan,
Yep.
Correct.
which
Yep.
had to be run by you folks.
Yep,
Correct.
and it'll have to include road networks and what they're gonna do to that and how they're gonna handle the sewer issues. And there'll be certainly other opportunities for neighbors such as yourself to talk about how this road alignment works, where their entrance is gonna be. All of that is part of the development process. This is just the step to determine whether that's an appropriate use.
All right. Well, I don't know if any of my other neighbors want to come speak on this, but I'll be back up when
Thank
we
you.
talk
Thank
about the
you.
multifamily dwellings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Judy Donlin, 9825 Evening Star. And I would just like to say, I don't feel that this is good use as commercial. Everyone who lives in the area is on acreage, and there are thousands of acres on the other side of the highway to develop yet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Simon, 38555 West 95th Street. I agree with what she just said. It's not appropriate use of this property. If you want to see what a mess you can make, come out to my house. You did that whole thing for the Flint organization. I'm getting the mud and my ponds are filling in. So come on out and see me, okay? I got the county coming out tomorrow, and Shirley Alderbrand. So be ready to dredge if you do. But this is not a proper use of this property.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the planning commission on this matter?
I'm just confused and have some questions.
I'm sorry, name and address for the record, please.
Vistana, Von Aukenall Lane, 40555 West 103rd Street. And we're, the owner of the property is T-Square LC, and we also own property north of K10. And my first question is, the gentleman talked about the property north of Evening Star Road. And I understand property east of Evening Star and west, but I don't understand where it's north.
I think he misspoke. I think he was talking about east of it.
Okay.
I
And
noticed that
so
too.
all of this is farmland, and all of us who adjoin this are maintaining that farmland. And we have cattle on our property who aren't going to like a lumber yard. And it's a small piece that you're talking about. I don't know how much you can do with that piece of property in the middle of farmland, which we intend to keep as farmland. Now, I may not have decades left, but what I have left, I would like to maintain that farmland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have decades left. My name's Eric Colleen. I also live at 40555 West 103rd Street, also part of T-Square LC. Again, I want my kids to farm. We live just down the road. That one square, I mean, there's an old farming family that's no longer there now. They moved, had to build a house somewhere else. That family, my family, what, 70 years? 75 years farming next to each other, they're gone. We got another family north, they're probably gonna be gone because of this. We're 12 minutes to get here, and you're talking about expanding the retail of DeSoto. There's nothing between DeSoto and there but farm ground. So for that square to be rezoned, how many family farms are you okay with going away? Because that's what it's going to end up doing. Just like this gentleman, who, I'm sorry, I am your neighbor, but I don't know you. Same thing, we see it before. Our ponds are filling in. Our lakes are filling in. It's going to cost $100K to get an excavator out there to dig out that, which nothing is going to happen here to lessen that burden. So before you rezone it, how many family farms is that worth? That's all.
Thank you.
I am Erin Conrad. I live in 9755 Evening Star. I think a big thing to take in consideration are all the businesses down that road. We have the tree farm business, which, I mean, he pulls in customers year round. He does amazing. We also have Caddy from my house is a farmer that takes cattle in. He's kind of the part of the reason he got beef. And then across the street from me is a jewelry counter. Kind of, they make it. They've been there since before I was born. I've lived at my house for 25 years. I'm 25 years old. My son is 3 and I'm raising him there. I don't want him to feel the city life. That's not fair. We all live out there because we want the quietness. We don't want to have our neighbors looking in our window. We don't want 50 million kids screaming down our road doing 50 miles an hour when my kid could get hit. My dog could get hit. Or, like we've had in the past, a cow could get out and your car's done for. Why is it fair to kick out all those businesses just to put in a commercial business that you guys think we need? When in reality, that cabinet business, the tree farm, and the cows, I mean, those are necessities. The tree farm, because people love Christmas. They want that sense of nature. The cabinets, that is a small owned business. He's been there years. The cattle, what would we do without it? Like, why take away someone's security? Like, out there's my security. And that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Penny Von Auken. I live at 1346 East 2350 Road. I moved out there because I wanted a rural area to live. I moved out there when I married my husband. He had lived there 84 years. I've lived there almost 60. My sister-in-law's lived there longer than I have. We've maintained the farm well, I think, as have our neighbors. And little by little, it's being eroded from us. I'd like to ask a question. The land that's in question tonight, what kind of soil rating does that have?
I'm sure we have no idea collectively.
Class 1, Class 2 soils?
I have no idea.
I can look it up.
We thought you were looking it up.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, we have prime farm ground around here, and it's a shame to squander it for developments that can go anywhere. We would like you to understand what treasures we have in our midst and help protect those treasures rather than put a quick stop on every corner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Johnson, and we're at 38095 West 95th Street. And I think I own that little triangle of land that you were talking about. And though I agree with everything that's already been said, that was the first I had heard of it, nobody's approached me about it, or, I just kind of wanted more information about that.
Which property?
What's that?
Which property are you talking about?
38095 West 95th, so that little triangle of land up at the top is part of our property that our house is on.
The one that's surrounded by blue there, the triangle?
No. Oh, okay.
I would think we probably aren't rezoning your property.
Okay. Well, I was thinking that it was, let's see, where's the 95th Street? I can see it right here. I thought we were right here.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that's circled in blue there. That's one of the tracks we're rezoning.
But you live on 95th Street?
Well, our house sits on 95th Street, then it goes, the highway cut through our land already, so, yeah. Yeah, I might have to, I can look at it. I was just.
So that would be north of those pieces of property.
Yeah.
The blue line that's on the north end of that runs along what would be about 99th Street.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, she might be north of.
Okay, so it's a little bit north of there.
It's 95th, isn't it? Yeah.
You said 38095?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think you're a little bit north of the triangle there.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Johnson, did you have another point you wanted to make?
No, I was just curious about that. Thank you.
Hopefully we put to rest the concern that we're rezoning your property, right?
I hope so.
Okay, good. Any other comments from the public?
Hi, I'm GW Weld, 707 Main Street, Eudora. I'm the applicant on this. So certainly appreciate everyone's feedback, and I understand when development comes near your home, it's a very sensitive topic, and certainly understand and appreciate all your comments. As developers and as local developers, we really take our cues from the city's future land use plans. This property is listed for sale. It's not listed for sale at prices that are agricultural prices. And so when we look at opportunities for development, especially with the K10 access via the exit ramp there, and the other developments that are happening at that K10 intersection, and look at the future land use map, our goal is to bring this property in alignment with the city's future plans so that we can go forward and find end users for this property. City of DeSoto recently dropped residential property taxes significantly, thanks 100% to the commercial and industrial development that's been going on in the community. And I know the city is active in pursuing retail and commercial developments as adjacent to the industrial that's happening. So that's why we've brought this before you. We think it is a proper land use with its K10 access. It is what the future land use map has shown for some time. And so we're looking forward to bringing a development that will be attractive to the community, that will grow the tax base, and that will not be a problem for the neighbors. We just don't feel like, whether it's us or someone down the road, we don't feel like this is going to be farm ground for the next 20 years. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if not, I'll let you continue to discuss.
Thank you. Matters still before the public. Anyone else want to speak?
I have one more question.
Sure,
Did DeSoto just annex the 3 parcels that we're talking about,
they did.
but not all the rest of the land?
I think there's a 4th parcel that's not part of this, correct?
Yeah, a small one, just to the north of, the one along the east side.
The city council annexed 5 tracts. There's only 4 that are being proposed for rezoning. 3 of them are those, the commercial tracts,
Okay.
and then 1 multifamily tract, which we'll talk about next.
So is it this one
Yep.
and this one and those 3 that I can't reach?
Yeah, it's the ones that are circled in blue.
Well, the little teeny triangle is the same tract, as I understand it, as the
This and this
the
one
bigger-
count as one.
Yeah,
Or I guess
they're
we're
part of
counting
the
as
same
one.
tract.
So this represents 3 tracks here. The 4th one is up here, and we'll talk about that next.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments during the public hearing? Still no one online. I will close the public hearing. Matters before the commission. Comments? Questions? Concerns?
My comments and concerns, I know it's zoned this way, but I hear you, we are losing our farm ground. And I hate to see it. So it's difficult when you know this has got to change and I trust the developers that are working on it. So sometimes you've got to weigh that with your decision. And believe me, I hate seeing our farmland destroyed, and I just talked to somebody at our church that said the farmland's being destroyed, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, that's how we feed our United States. That's how we live. And it makes it hard to sit up here sometimes, it really does, so we understand what you're saying.
I know this was just annexed into the city, and this is the first zoning into the city zoning categories. And since there's no sewer, and it sounds like it's gonna be a while before that gets put through there, I don't know. At some point, this will be the appropriate category. I just don't know that with the road the way it is and no sewers, whether this would be the proper category to come in. I would like to see something else, but I understand it has to be something for the city category. This is just the rezoning board. If it comes to development, there's gonna have to be site plans and other things, and hopefully that will all be taken into consideration so that the rest of the property around it isn't disturbed as much as some of the things that have happened recently. That's my hope.
I appreciate that you trust the developers. I ask that you trust the landowners that have been there. I mean, some of that land has been in a family for over 100 years.
I do.
Ours is just 75 years.
I understand.
But we've been good stewards of the land.
Yes, and we appreciate
And
that.
we believe we should be trusted and heard.
Absolutely.
So, the issue before us tonight is whether or not this proposed change to C2 zoning is appropriate for this location. Things that are taken into account are those things that are in the staff report that were described. The practical reality is that whether it's currently used as farm ground or not, it fronts K10 on an interchange in a very busy area where there's going to be development at some point. The owner of this tract has asked us to rezone it, and we have a duty to them, as we do to the neighbors, to say, well, it's their property, what do they want to do with it? Oh, they want to do commercial zoning. Is that an appropriate use here? Well, it fronts the highway, and it's on the interchange. Is that a better use than doing 10-acre tracts with rural development? Probably, if you think about it in the context of how to build a city, this is the place you'd probably want to put commercial property. The fact that it may historically have been farm ground, I get that, but by that same token, we've had a highway that's been built there for a very long time with a whole lot of cars going by, and we have a giant industrial complex that was built long before I was born that's on the back side of that. So to the extent that there's going to be development there, the only thing we can do as a city and as a community is try to control it and say, where do we want it? Where should it go? None of those things lead me to believe that this is an inappropriate place for a commercial zone. Now, I totally understand that development is disruptive, that that's the reason we have the process of the plat and the site plan, and we have city staff who's supposed to help figure out what happens with runoff and those kinds of issues. You've got county officials that are coming to take a look at your ponds that are filling up for runoff. That's the right call, because it shouldn't happen that way. But that has to do with controlling that development as opposed to whether this is an appropriate use of land. And for that reason, I think I would favor changing this to a commercial zone at this area. I think it is consistent with the overall plan. And quite frankly, it's probably where the commercial ought to be as opposed to someplace even further away from the highways and trying to build that out as residential or trying to leave it rural there. It just doesn't work in terms of the overall plan. So that's my 2 cents.
So I'm kind of going to echo the same thing that the chairman just mentioned. This is a very busy highway on K10. I mean, it's a great interchange, improvements on the south side of Curd at 103rd Street. The future land use plan has shown commercial and mixed use at this interchange. I understand the public's concern with erosion, traffic, access, worried about what's going to go in there. I mean, again, what's before us, like the chairman said, is a land use decision tonight. All those concerns that the public has, that'll be addressed at a later meeting, with access, and have to do a traffic study, have to do drainage study. All that stuff will be hashed out with staff, and then it'll come in front of planning commission again. So, this would be the first step in the developer's, progress to get to that point. And also on another point, I mean, the landowner wants to rezone this. They want the best and highest use for their property. And we're here to protect the public and make sure that that best and highest use does not impact the neighbors. So, I generally follow what Chairman said and the staff's professional opinion on recommending approval.
Well, you guys know where I sit is, I like commercial up next to residential a lot more than I like other uses, so I think this is reasonable. And frankly, proximity to K10, I think it's gonna happen. So, yeah, I'm in favor.
Certainly think it wouldn't be appropriate to make that industrial at this point, certainly because there's plenty of industrial ground across the street. I got that. So I don't think it's appropriate development for industrial, and I really can't see it being a proliferation of residential uses. Certainly the part that fronts the highway wouldn't be, and I'm not sure any of that really would work. It's topography out there. But to me, it seems like it's an appropriate choice.
Park.
Any other comments? Motion?
Make a motion, we recommend approval of the subject property on agenda item 5B for zoning from ROR to C2.
Second.
RUR.
RUR to C2.
Chairman, this is Patrick, sorry, online. Could you just reference the professional staff that you agree with that, the criteria? We've been trying to do that with the motions, just to try to deviate, specify why.
Recommendation by staff.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Milburn, would you
Yes.
modify your motion to reference the recommendation of professional staff?
Yes, I recommend approval of parcels noted in the agenda item 5B with staff's professional opinion on recommendation of approval from RUR to C2.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Templin,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Lane,
No.
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 5C, rezoning north of K10 and east of Evening Star to R3.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The issues that were raised for this, or the previous rezoning, very similar to what's being proposed, or the same issues regarding the item on 5C. However, the applicant has requested a change from RUR to R3 multifamily. As you know, that we did change a few years ago the density in the R3 to 24 units per acre, but you can also have single family and duplex in our R3 category as well. So there is the opportunity for different types of housing development on this tract. So I'll run through the criteria briefly, but I'm not going to spend as much time on it as I did, because many of the items are very similar as far as the improvements necessary for north of Evening Star, the gravel road, access to Evening Star Road and utilities along those lines as well. But we did do all the notification requirements, signs, et cetera, for this particular tract. As you can see, it's a little bit further north and to the east on K10. There also is one of those little triangles hanging on the other side of the K10 highway, which is now in the Flint development area. There's almost 30 acres of property in this location that the applicant is requesting to have rezoned to R3 multifamily. The land use plan does show this as mixed use, this tract itself. And the tract that I referenced, that was the fifth tract that was annexed, that doesn't have an application for a rezoning, is just to the west of this tract, where the kind of jogs out a little bit on the map, I guess. So where the blue line is, where it goes north, and then it just cuts over to the right for a little bit. Maybe I'll just go over and point it out. Right where the cursor is.
So it's that
That
9.7
tract
acre
is
tract.
also under ownership by Clairview LLC. So with that, I really think I wanted to emphasize the character of the neighborhood, compatibility of the proposed uses, very similar impacts to neighbors as far as uses and the need for the site plan process, which we have talked many times about, and the traffic impacts, the lighting impacts, the noise impacts. Certainly could be some more police and sheriff involvement, fire issues with a multifamily development than what we're talking about with the commercial development. But once again, the issues that we're before us is a property that's once again along K10 Highway with an interchange, and it's been part of our comprehensive plan, land use plan for, in this case, mixed use, which the applicant is asking for a multifamily R3, which I said is up to 24 units per acre. And then also you can have duplexes and single-family residential. And we went through a lot of that modification of the process as far as lot widths for those, for the duplex and the R residential district as well. We will require site plan development, stormwater issues, lighting evaluations as potential for this develops. We've talked about the utilities, how they're not in place at this point. But certainly under an R3 zoning would have to be on a sanitary sewer system, which could be several years away. But this is an area that could be served since there is development across the highway that will ultimately have sanitary sewer nearby. So as I said, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to go through all these. It's a very similar type of recommendation in the staff report as far as the concerns and issues that might come up with a tract like this. But what we've had, as you recall, on Kill Creek and K10 also, some issues where we had multifamily, and it's best to have that buffered up against the highway versus a single family types of development. So with that, staff does recommend approval of this rezoning change to R3. And I'll certainly stand for any questions you may have.
Right, I missed what you said there. Did you say that 9.7 acres that's just to the left of that little kick out there is also owned by the same
Yes.
owner? Okay. And that is not under consideration today?
No, it is not.
Do you think of any other R3 we have in the city that doesn't have access to the street of Collector Road?
No, I sure can't. But as pointed out earlier,
The
yeah,
9.7 is not part of the deal.
right, but it's all under single ownership, so, and that will be something obviously we would require prior, or the planning commission would ultimately make that decision on a site plan.
It just troubles me because it's kind of an island without
It-
having
it-
access to the street. And R3 is the most intense residential development we have, and
You're correct, Mr. Chairman.
it seems like that's kind of a missing piece.
It is a little bit, but I suppose at that point, I haven't asked specifically the developer, but it's one of those things that didn't maybe exactly know what they wanted with that spot, and why would you want to rezone something, then maybe rezone it back? I mean, and we've had that happen a few times with the planning commission where somebody's rezoned something and then zoned it back, and it's, you know, maybe this one was just a track they felt like, we'll
I
just
don't like
leave this
when
one
that
alone
happens.
for the time. Yeah.
That's just what I'm trying to avoid.
Is it not a requirement of any of our zones to have a way to access it?
I don't know that
It's a
access-
requirement of all the zones for a building permit, so.
Yeah, but
For a
zoning
building permit,
issue, I
but
don't
for
know
rezoning
that-
purposes,
Yeah,
we
we,
don't have to
um,
know how they're gonna get to it, I guess.
We don't have many truly landlocked parcels, and I guess you could consider this one a truly landlocked parcel, so it doesn't come up often.
First I've seen it.
This is Pat, and maybe GW can address, but I think this parcel just inadvertently was not included when the legals. So I think they would have liked to rezone it, but it just didn't get some time for that.
That's correct. I have a rezoning application that will be submitted tomorrow on the 9.7 acres. We did not get that turned in time to be on this agenda.
Okay, well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Brad?
Not for Brad. I did have yeah, if you don't mind. Is the 9.7 re-app, is that for R3 as well?
No, the idea with the 9.7 is that would be commercial also, but
Okay.
there would be a road that would access the
Okay.
R3 through that commercial piece.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you.
No other questions at this moment. I would open this up for a public hearing. Again, if you wish to address the planning commission on this application, please give your name and address and give us your thoughts.
Jerry Donlin, 9825 Evening Star Road. Multi-family dwelling. That can mean a whole lot of things. It can mean a whole lot of things as far as whether they're apartments, duplexes, townhouses. But one of my concerns is what type of families are going to be occupying these dwellings and living out there by me. Because, like one of my neighbors mentioned, we don't really want people being able to come close by and look in our windows or whatever. But if these guys get this approved before any actual physical development starts, they have to submit some type of a development plan
Yes.
that needs to be approved by you folks. Is there any type of multifamily dwelling plan that any of you can tell me you would not be in favor of? Because one of my big concerns, everybody's got to have a place to live. I get it. And I'm all about our social safety nets. But I'm not too thrilled about the possibility of low-income, government-subsidized housing button up to the back end of my property. And I think if it was your neighborhood that was facing the same situation, you'd have similar concerns. How long after a plan is submitted and gets approved does the actual physical development, the trucks and building materials, everything, before it starts coming in? I'm just trying to get an idea of how much time we've got left to enjoy our property.
Well, if it's any help to you, none of that's going to happen until the sewer gets developed. So there's going to have to be some thought put into it and some money and some real planning to get sewer service to that area. because you
Where's the
couldn't
sewer
do-
money gonna come from?
Well, it's gonna have to come from the developer unless there's some sort of other supplier. But it's not gonna come from, city tax money. We can't pay for that either. We don't have that kind of money.
Mhm.
So, there may be some sort of tax abatement or something to help with that, but all of that's gonna have to take time. It's gonna have to take planning. And at this point, I don't believe there's been any studies done in terms of how to sewer that area. So this isn't something that's likely to develop in any time in the near future. It's gonna take a while.
Okay, well,
Recognize, again, the question before us tonight is that an appropriate place for this kind of development? You made a very good argument that says it backs up to my property, and my property is a large acreage development, my large acreage home. And I think that's an excellent point. So I appreciate that.
all right.
Bill Simon, 38555 West 95th Street. And this property does back up to the south end of my property. So I'm that triangle, well, I don't think you even have it on there.
A little further north.
Yeah. And Mrs. Lane, I appreciate what you said earlier, but I remember something you said at an earlier meeting too. Now that we got all the plant annexed, we don't have to go west. I remember you distinctly saying that in one of our previous meetings. And why are we going west when we could go south? There's tons of acres out there that need to be developed. And you got a big 2-lane or 4-lane road going right out Evening Star Road through it. What is wrong with that access to put businesses on each side of it or curve it a little further on an ammunition plant that's sitting idle? So I think that's what I would do if I was you. And I guess the other question I have is, where's the rest of the DeSoto population in making this decision tonight? Is it just the people that are next to it? This affects their tax base. Wouldn't they want to understand what's going on? And the third comment is, I would say ditto to everything Jerry said, but I would say, I think if you're going to ask for rezoning, we ought to be able to see roads and sewers and everything else before that final decision's made on all of these. To come in and say, we're going to do it, and I trust Mr. Weldon, because I think I knew he's dead, but to trust anybody on doing things is just not in today's world. And so I can just see a whole line of apartments across the south end of our property. And the sewer line, hell, they could come in through my property with it before it's over with, and I could just maybe suck out all my mud out of my pond. But I'd say this is not an appropriate use. This is an island. There is no road access. There's nothing on this plot that says we ought to approve this tonight. And that's what I would say is, don't do it. Okay? Period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simon.
Judy Donlin, 9825 Evening Star. I would like to just point out a couple things on your map over here, if I may. This is our property here, this centerpiece that goes through. These folks right here just moved in within the last probably 3 to 4 months and spent almost $700,000 for this home. So they could be in a rural area out of Cedar Creek where they used to live. And to have all this in front of them turned into commercial, bunch of hogwash. And it tells me that there is really no respect for the property owners in the area. We've been out there 40 years. And we never would have even thought about moving out there had we known this was coming this late in our lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? With that, I'll close the public hearing. The matter is back before the planning commission.
I have a quick question for staff. Are the tracks the narrow tracks here and well, actually, the adjacent properties, are they all RUR as it stands today?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
And those are not in the city.
Correct.
Except for the 9.7 that didn't make the cut?
Yes, the 9.7 has been
Okay.
annexed.
Got it.
Comments or questions?
Well, to me, this looks and feels an awful lot like the Kill Creek K10, where we kicked it back because if I put myself in their shoes, I'm not in favor of multifamily development next to large single-family residential. I don't like the way it presents. I would prefer that it was buffered. I know that generally comes with a site plan, which is what we had the last time, but that's kind of where I sit with it.
My problem is I don't know. My problem is I don't know how access is gonna work on this. And it just seems like, certainly to the extent that the neighboring development is already there in terms of the large lot residential, without having that connection, it just doesn't seem like an appropriate place to drop high-intensity residential development. And so I kind of feel like we don't have enough information to make that decision as to its appropriateness. It may be, and, you know, I think just relying on the fact that the properties are under common ownership, they won't always be under common ownership. We're given a rezoning and saying it's appropriate to be there. So I do think it's something we probably ought to give some additional thought to how that's gonna work. And I just don't remember us dropping an R3 with, it wasn't actually fronting a large arterial road or wasn't part of another development that did have that. It's just, to me, that's a hard sell.
Thank you.
I'm kind of same boat as Charles with the putting up to the large lot, same kind of deal we came up at Kill Creek. I don't agree with the B on the compatibility factors. I don't agree that that's compatible with the neighborhood. The adequate availability of sewers obviously is a factor. That's not there yet. On G, it says the extent to which the use is allowed proposed zoning would adversely affect the capacity or safety of the street network. Well, there's no access to the street on that property, so I find that should be negative instead of neutral. So there's several points on that I don't agree with on the staff part.
John, you just made Patrick very happy, because that's what
Yeah.
he's been asking us to do. Look, a thumbs up from it, right?
I'm trying, Patrick, I'm learning. But that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Comments, discussion, motions?
I mean, I hear what my fellow commissioners are saying. I still listen to the public comments again. And again, I'm going to echo some of the comments I had on the last agenda item. You know, those are all issues that can be addressed on the site plan. I can hear Chairman Timlin's comment about access to the tract. It's out there in the middle of nowhere, but again, the developer cannot move forward with developing that landlocked tract of land without submitting a development plan showing the access. Again, this thing is on the future land use plan as mixed use, and I still think it's an appropriate location for this type of zoning. I agree with staff's professional opinion on the comments that they made, and I think this is the right spot for it.
Okay.
think some of the comments sounded like the neighbors thought this project, and when I say a project, I mean construction may be approved here by our action. This recommendation to the city council doesn't authorize construction. Or, you know, that there are many steps that have to be taken in the future. And you know, it is a little hard to envision how this access will work for this property, but the entire neighborhood's gonna have to change for this to be a place where somebody wants to build high-density residential. Just like the area to the north of this property, to the north of the commercial and the south, is going to have to change in character for commercial to be appropriate in that location. You know, you're not gonna go out and build a Walmart in a bean field if there's no people living around it. And that's kind of the view I take on this. If the farmers, it's a shame for people to live on nice, fertile ground the way they always wanted to live and feel like they're being forced out. And I wish I had a better answer for that. But I don't see this action tonight having an impact on those neighboring farmers for a long time.
What about our property values?
So just so I understand, just hearing what you just said.
I'm sorry, we
all of us
actually
have to
closed the
change.
public hearing, but if you would like to come back up,
I just have a
a
quick
motion to
clarification
reopen the public
question.
hearing for additional comment.
I'd move that we reopen.
Second? All right, go ahead.
Eric Colleen, 40555 East 103rd Street, West 103rd Street, thanks. So what you're saying is we all need to change so one person can get a rezoning done. Is our whole lifestyle, our whole livelihood, everything has to change. But we're all there. We're all making a living. We're all, you know, taking care of the ground we've been taking care of for generations. So for one rezoning, it's up to us to just adapt.
Out of fairness, that's not what I heard Commissioner Huggins say.
Oh, sure.
He said that in order for them to actually move forward with construction and to build this, there's gonna have to be significant change in the area.
Then why are we worrying about a rezoning now for
Question
something
is-
that's 30 years down the road?
Is it an appropriate use at this location is really the only question in front of us. Not whether we can build it, whether it should be built, what will have to change or what has to be done. It's a question of, if you're looking at this map and you're looking at an interchange with a highway, is it appropriate? This has got a different question than the one we had before, which was the C2. This is a residential development that fronts the highway. Generally, you're not gonna build large lot development along that, and so you probably are talking about some more intense use. The issues that we've discussed are, you know, the road network, and do we actually have a way to connect to it? And those are the kinds of things that we can talk about in the context of this. But it isn't a question of whether or not they will actually build it. That's gonna come up in terms of them submitting plans, submitting the plat and the site plan. All of that will come back before the process through the city.
So is it an appropriate use? Are you looking at it currently, or are you looking at, is it an appropriate use 10, 15, 20 years down the road when you're making this decision?
Well, it's a good question, because I want to address Mr. Simon's comment on that as well, in that in a perfect world, it'd be nice to be able to do this and legally make the decision based upon the full set of facts of how it's going to be built out. The state statutes don't really work that way. The state statute says you have to decide whether or not it's appropriate land use, separate and apart from the question of actually what's built there. And in doing that, you have to think of, okay, what's the most intense thing that could be developed there, and would it work? That's really the test. And so we don't know what those answers are, and we're not allowed to, quite frankly, under the state law. The question before us tonight is, if that developed as residential, would it be appropriate there, and residential and high density? And for the reasons we've talked about, those are the things, the staff report commented on those, and John's pointed out several staff report items that he doesn't agree with, and that's what we're doing tonight.
And that's all fair, and I do appreciate the education and guidance. This is something that I'll be taking over here, so this is the first time I've had to worry about this, and it is, but I have seen it in the past, and I have seen, no, don't worry about that, it's not gonna work like that, then it does. Then we come back to the government and whichever committee or council we have to go to and say, hey, you approved this despite our protests, we're asking for some protections, we didn't get those. A great example is no semi trucks on Old K10, or I guess if it's on that map, it'll be 103rd Street, west of Evening Star Road. That got denied. You know, we've seen increased speeding. We've asked for more police presence to monitor the speed. It's 45. I have a radar. I've clocked people doing 60. You know, when we come and we've asked for help, we've been told, hey, don't worry, that's another committee, or that still has to get approved. But then our concerns aren't heard those. So when we start to see one domino fall, like I understand, and I apologize, Mr. Counselor or Commissioner, I'm not sure about the title, so I apologize, sir, is we start to see, like we've seen this before where we were told, don't worry, this is just a formality. They still have to get past that. It's just, and I mean, you can hear how many people live on that road that are in this room. Like, the entire neighborhood is here with concerns, and we just watched the first motion basically pass. Thank you, by the way, ma'am. I appreciate that. So, I mean, you keep telling us not to worry, yet when we've seen this in the past and we've gotten told the same thing, we still end up getting screwed over.
So I'm going to stop you there because I don't think anybody's told you not to worry. You're here tonight because you're committed and you care.
That's fair. I
We're here
apologize.
tonight because we're committed and we care. None of us are telling you this is nothing to worry about. It is a question of a domino. I get that. You've made it clear that you oppose the first domino. We've told you we have a legal requirement to make a determination based upon what we can, and we have to confine our decision to that. I understand there will be other dominoes, and I fully expect to see you back here and making those points. And when the city tells you there aren't trucks beyond the street, I expect you to go complain to them and go to city council. That's how democracy works. That's how this system works. So please keep coming. Please keep giving us your comments. And don't think for a minute that any of us are telling you don't worry about this.
No, you're right. That was hyperbolic on my part. I apologize. You did not at all say not to worry about it. That was passion over logic for a brief brain fart. So I apologize. But I do appreciate that you are recognizing our perspective and where we're coming from. And that was not meant in any disrespect by any ways, but it does kind of feel like we're pushing that rock up a hill and it's gonna have to roll back down on us, but thank you for your time.
Guys, you know, we've got a big crowd here, but I've been doing this for 10 years. And I can't tell you how many meetings we've had where there's not a single person here. And until it affects you, you're not involved. So the city's been having a lot of meetings on different community events and planning. I would encourage you to attend those, submit your surveys to see what's going on, what people want. If you don't want it, then by all means, that's your opportunity to speak up. It's not difficult.
Thank you.
You saw me get emotional before because it is not easy for us to sit up here and make.
If I may, I'd like to close the public hearing again. We reopened it before that comment. No objections?
Nope.
To the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to say that the recommendation tonight will go to the city council on June 19th. So for folks in the audience, it's the council meeting on the 19th, which is,
Hasn't that been rescheduled?
oh, that's right, pardon me. That's Juneteenth, the federal holiday. It's the 18th, the Wednesday,
So this will go before city council, no matter what we decide tonight on June 8th.
June 18th, correct.
Thank you.
7 o'clock in these chambers.
Thank you. Matters back before the planning commission. Any comments, further discussion?
I have a motion. See if I can get through it properly, follow what Patrick's recommendations are. So I'm going to make a motion that we deny the motion to recommend approval for item 5C for rezoning of parcels 3F 211 301 through 1004 from to R3 multifamily for the city council meeting.
So you're recommending denial.
Recommending
as the
denial.
recommendation to the council.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Is it adequate if we reference the discussion here, Patrick, or do you need specific findings?
No, I think you can just reference that for the reasons that you earlier stated, because you're pretty clear that.
Yeah. For the record, for the two primary reasons are road access, what John brought up, and I don't think it's an appropriate use of land abutted up against large single-family lots.
Perfect.
Thanks.
You still keep your second?
I keep my second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Maddock,
Am I approving my denial?
If you vote yes,
It would
you're
be yes.
asking to deny.
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz, Milburn.
No.
Motion carries.
Recommending denial.
That one always goofs me up. Thank you.
Does anyone have an objection moving on through the agenda? Can you take a break? You good?
Good.
All right. Item 7A, site plan for sign in the right of way for residences at Lexington.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the Lexington Avenue coming through town has quite a wide right-of-way, and we do have several signs in the right-of-way. The process for approving a sign in the right-of-way is a site plan submittal before the Planning Commission, and the applicant for the residences of Lexington, Dustin Baker, is here tonight requesting that the median on 90th Street be allowed to be used for a sign. I have included the potential sign in the packet for your to look at. I also want to point out there was a temporary sign in the median while construction was going, but at this point the applicant would like to get an approval for the location of its sign itself. Staff is recommending, as you can see, it's 175 feet wide. Now primarily most of that 175 feet is to the east of Lexington Avenue, and you can see where the median strip is there. Our recommendation is to allow the sign in the median strip. It is about 8 feet wide, and it'll be centered and be 20 feet back from the western edge to allow for some line of sight issues for vehicles that might be pulling up to that sign location and wanting to enter Lexington Avenue with a left turn. So with that, that's basically a pretty simple staff report. We do have, Tri-Century Bank, JT's, and then those locations, the townhomes also have a sign in the right-of-way as well. So it's not uncommon to have this, especially on Lexington Avenue, which has such a wide right-of-way. Stand for any questions you may have.
So the sign will allow for 110 feet of right-of-way,
Yes.
and there's no sight distance issues?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So this sign is in public road?
Yes. Or potentially.
Who's responsible for this sign?
The applicant is responsible for maintaining the sign.
So
Do we make them sign an agreement? Isn't there a right-of-way use agreement that it is signed? Patrick, you might remember, the school district has one at the West Y. That message board sign they has is there. And I remember some sort of an agreement to the effect that applicant understands that it's in the right-of-way, might be able to have to be moved, that sort of thing. Patrick, do you recall?
That's what I'm remembering too.
Or if somebody runs into it, then the applicant has to get out and fix it.
Yes, that is correct. If you'd like to put that in your motion, that the applicant's responsible for maintaining, repairing the sign would.
I'm curious, has the city ever had this right of way, have a track dedicated within this right of way that can be part of an agreement that, you know, specifically makes the sign holder responsible for that tract?
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been quite a while since we did that other one. And are there others?
Well, we haven't approved a new sign in the right of way since I've been here.
Yeah.
So
it's been more than 10 years. I just don't recall. I know we didn't define a tract or anything like that, but there might be some indemnification language associated with that. I don't recall the specifics of that. But the first step is planning commission approval. We know that much.
And this is up to planning commission to approve, so it won't go to council.
Yeah, it doesn't
Mr.
have
Chairman,
to-
the applicant would like to
What's the
address the
agreement?
planning commission if.
Can I speak?
Is there an objection to letting Dustin?
Please.
Apparently no objection.
Dustin Baker, Alcove Development. Mr. Huggins, I'll just say that I'll just make the comment on the record that whatever I need to do in indemnification, maintain it, I understand I have to maintain it, I need to mow around it. If a car hits it, a semi hits it, that's on our development, and whatever agreement that Patrick needs us to sign to that effect, I'm willing to sign.
Thank you. Brad, I don't want to get into this. This is a long discussion we had with lit signs and electronic signs. Is there anything that we need to know as it relates to how many lumens this thing puts off or anything along those lines?
I didn't specifically ask that. Now that the approval of the signs actually goes to the building official department.
Okay.
The sign will be lighted. There'll be some backlighting on the lights as I understand it, but nothing glaring or something that might interfere with driver's vision.
Okay.
And it shows 60 watts is what the lighting's.
Yeah, I assumed we were fine, but I
Yeah.
just thought
Yeah.
it would be prudent to at least ask.
Yep. No. Hey, look at that.
Considering how we flogged the DeSoto United Methodist Church for their sign, I think, we gotta be fair.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a duty of ours, is it, to at least poke a hole or two or ask a question.
It's a very nice looking sign.
It is a nice looking sign.
Further discussion, motions, if you would like me to, I can make a motion.
Sure.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, I don't get in trouble with you.
I would like to move approval of the sign with the condition that the sign is set back 20 feet from the western edge of the median to allow for 110 feet of right-of-way and line of sight for vehicular traffic, and subject to a right-of-way use agreement acceptable to the city, with the applicant accepting responsibility for maintaining the sign and surrounding area.
I second
Second.
that. Sounds good. We're glad you.
Further discussion? Roll call?
Schultz,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Milburn,
Yes.
Madoff.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Sounds like a lawyer could have wrote that up.
Thank you.
Glad you said it.
Item 7B, consider final plat for Geiger Concrete at 10680 Evening Star Road.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We recently went through a special use permit process for approval of the Geiger Ready Mix plant. south on Evening Star Road. One of the conditions in that approval was for the applicant to plat the property, which is what you have before you. We have reviewed this plat. It doesn't contain a utility easement around the north, west, and south sides. Also has dedication of right-of-way along Evening Star to allow for an ultimate arterial through that area. Does have our typical language for delayed improvements, which we require on all our plats, and it does maintain the presentation and the allows for the approval of the, or the construction of the site plan as presented at the special use permit public hearing. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
So I'm sorry, Brad, you said it is consistent with the site plan we saw?
Yes.
I guess that right of way is gonna be dedicated along Evening Star. Is that adequate for that future road coming through there?
Yeah, it's a 60 of a total 120.
Awesome.
I remember talking about that being 120 was what we were thinking we needed. Any questions about that? Discussion. Thank you, Brad. Motions? This is, again, approval by the planning commission, be referred to council for acceptance of the easements and rights.
Correct.
I move we recommend approval of the Geiger ready mix plan in item 7B. As stated by staff, the additional right-of-way on Evening Star Road will be dedicated with the plat and in the utility north, south, west.
Second.
We got dueling professional motions going on tonight.
How about that? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Metoff,
Yes.
Milburn.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Final item on the agenda, 7C, consider final plat for Godin Estates?
I believe it's Gaudian? I'm not
Gaudian.
sure. The applicant is here in the audience tonight. Maybe they can clarify that for us.
Gaudian. Thank you. I was taught whole language as a kid. I can't pronounce anything. Brad?
All right, this has been an interesting process as far as this plat, but it's before you tonight. Now, it is a minor subdivision plat because it's only 5 lots, but it is probably one of the larger residential plats that we've ever had before us. This is a part of the JA Farms that was recently purchased by Russell Lindmark, who's the applicant tonight. We have met with their consulting engineers and the applicant, looked at their, reviewed their sketch plat and provided comments. Now, this is interesting because it is, the request is for a private gated community with a private road, and we don't allow private roads except with city council approval. So that will be an additional step that the council will have to take. And I believe, Mike, that you brought this up to the development committee several months ago when this first came up, that has several, couple council members on it, and they didn't see any problems or issues granting that request. So we relayed that information to the applicant. So you can see that there are 5 lots on this tract. It's quite a large tract, and the road network is, it's been very strongly shown there, but it does weave its way through the area and does conclude at the north. One thing that city staff wanted was to take that up to the property line. So ultimately, if there were ever to be a connection with Gardner Road and this development or this property chooses not to go or allow for public access through this area, there would be that potential for connection. So we've met with the applicant, we've worked through the process and the steps. Additionally, there's going to be a water line that'll have to be installed, which will be a public water line, but these are all improvements that will be made 100% by the applicant themselves. And then, of course, they'll have to get approval from Joe, city engineer, on the standards for the road. We do have a typical rural road that we've talked about with the applicant that they will be responsible for constructing and maintaining. And then lastly, actually two additional things. There will be a gate, as I mentioned, which does include a term called a Knox box, which allows for emergency services to proceed through the gate if there's a certain reason to do that. Then finally, we did get additional right-of-way dedicated along Corliss Road. We actually show Corliss as an arterial within the city of DeSoto, and we've got additional right-of-way for improving, or at least for that location. You can see it's kind of right along Corliss, the wedge-shaped piece, yeah, right to the left, yeah, right there is being dedicated to the city. So it meets our standards for the minor subdivision. There are, once again, improvements that the applicant will have to make as far as in dedication of easements and as I mentioned, the Knox box, things like that. But I'll stand for any questions you may have. And once again, the city council does have the ability, sole ability to approve a private road in DeSoto. So you would be making a potential motion to approve the plat as presented.
How do we approve the plat without the city giving the city council giving approval for the private road first?
Well, that's a good question. We had that
I think that kind of
discussion and felt like if we hold that out as far as the city council approving it, you're still the city council accepting the private easement essentially. So that's within their jurisdiction as we see as far as moving the process, the plat forward from just planning commission to city council.
But this is a final plat. So they aren't accepting a public road.
We've had final plats be approved with contingencies from the planning commission before. Usually they were cartography errors or something pretty simple, but I think it's allowable. Patrick's online if he needs to.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, no, I agree, as long as we call that out.
Yeah.
If we approve this, are we, the city then, the city council is gonna be approving a private road along the access easement as drawn?
Essentially, and I did ask the applicant about that because it does look like it kind of worms its way through there. But they did have their engineer look at making sure the curves and all that were consistent with typical design speeds for that area. And also they wanted to preserve as much vegetation to the area as possible. But I don't see this ever, well, we did talk about it potentially connecting with Gardner Road. But at this point, it's all going to be held by a private owner, and whether that connection ever happens is something that will be decided by future city staff and planning commissions.
Where's Gardner Road come in here?
It is almost, it's fairly close to being straight. It's right on that section line, right? I believe to the,
Look up there it is.
Well,
So
this.
is that Gardner? Oh, that far over?
Over there, right? Yeah,
Gardner Road's like another half section to the north.
yeah.
We have to understand that. We've got
Okay,
to.
so there's a whole other half section
There's a
up.
whole other half section that's owned by a split property along the extension of Gardner Road to the
Oh, I
north
see,
of it.
okay, yeah,
As well as there's an 80-foot cliff at the north end of our property.
yeah, okay. It's fun to traverse.
A little bit switchback.
So this, the property we're talking about is if you're looking north, the bridge over the top of K10 would be right behind us, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That's what I'm having a hard time.
You guys will be in shouting distance of my house.
Your neighbors.
Yeah.
Brad, doesn't this plat say it's dedicating Corliss right away?
Yes.
So wouldn't it take council action?
Yeah, they'll have to.
Yeah, I mean, this will go to council for the acceptance of easements and rights of way. So, yeah, and we typically, we've even had a few plats, if you remember the carriage houses, where there wasn't any easements or right of way, but we always still take those to city council for approval.
So how long is this drive?
Oh, gosh, off the top of my head, I don't know if you can recall, but it's a fairly significant distance.
So it's definitely more than a half mile,
Yes.
because, so how long a dead-end road would DeSoto allow in a development?
Well, if it's a cul-de-sac, I believe our standard's 600 feet. Is that?
Yeah, I think it sounds, I was gonna say 8, but yeah, something less than 1,000 feet.
So this is a little bit longer than that.
Oh, yeah, quite a bit, actually.
So wouldn't the same the same rationale for not allowing a cul-de-sac to be more than 600 feet apply to this road?
Well, you're right, and it's kind of our opinion as we went through this whole process that the council, because it's a private road, and if the council approves it, some of those issues go away as long as, and once again, I don't ever see a situation where there's going to be a problem with, a lot of times we have those because we don't want too much traffic or emergency vehicles to not be able to access a potential fire or something along those lines. But with the large lots on this and the proposed plan by the applicant, I just felt it was.
How many dwelling units could they build on each of these lots?
Just one. These are all zoned RO.
The RO, they're only allowed one dwelling unit on each of those, so it's kind of like county zoning, basically, where you just have a large lot.
And then, once again, back to our land use plan, everything kind of east of Kill Creek, other than that Arbor Ridge and some areas around there, are shown to be rural, large lot tracts, and that's what the applicant is wanting to do.
Would we be allowed to give a little bit of color commentary to help them understand the reason
Oh,
behind this?
It's up to chairman's discretion.
Applicant?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Please, come up, give your name and address for the record.
Give them some.
You want my address here on this, or where I'm
You
living
just give me
currently?
something for the record, that's all I care about.
Russell and Sherry Lindmark, 9205 Corliss Road. So the idea here, we bought this with the idea that Sherry and I would be the only house on there. Right up until our 3 daughters said, well, what if we want to build there? So the reason that there's 4 lots is we have 3 daughters. They're all in their 20s. They haven't signed a definitive agreement that they're going to build, but we wanted to have the possibility that they could build there.
I like where your head's at.
Yeah, but I can assure you that we're not going to market these other 3 lots. That we're going to enjoy this property, the 2 of us. She's wanted land since we got married, and she has got 50% of the vote, which I don't know how many of you are married, but yeah. So we got land. So that's our dream. That's our plan. As far as the connection to Gardner Road, it literally is you can look at the elevations. It's a 90-foot drop off, 80-foot drop off across 30 feet. There really is no way to connect it. There's no other area that we can have a second entrance to this lot. And the reason we want the gate is simply for the security. We're out in 350 acres and want to have that security of a gate.
Thank you.
So, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll let you guys.
Now, are you proposing to gate it at Corliss or at the end of the cul-de-sac?
No, when working with the city, we're bringing a 800-foot cul-de-sac in, extending Explorers Trail, which is across Corliss, and then putting the gate there.
So at the cul-de-sac bulb?
Sorry?
At the cul-de-sac bulb of the
Yes.
newly constructed cul-de-sac?
You mentioned 800 feet.
Is
This
it
lot
800 feet?
5.
I'm pretty sure it's 600.
I'm sorry.
About 750 now.
Yeah, we just took the cul-de-sac to the back of those lots along Corliss, essentially.
the plan for this water line that's being installed to be adequate for fire flow for protecting these houses?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we talked, yeah, I think they put in 2 hydrants, is that correct?
Yep, an 8-inch line, yeah.
Well, personally, I totally get the appeal of having your kids live close to you. Mine, neither one decided to live anywhere near me, so I think you've done a great job. That said, we are approving this not knowing who might own these in the future. And I'm a little concerned with us approving a plat that has dotted lines for an access easement without a dedicated public street. I get the fact we might not doing a public street, and it would be up to council as to whether or not they want to approve that, but I'm just not terribly comfortable on giving a final approval for a plat with dotted lines on an access easement as opposed to the street that gives clear access. And, you know, maybe my comments should be softened there and say that, you know, do it subject to approval of the council, and they can do what they want to do with it. It's just things that seems to me like that's a cart before the horse. Because if the council says no, then the plat isn't going to do them any good.
We would just come back through the process again. So I mean, that kind of governs us in the process, and I'm sorry.
Sure.
Tim Homberg, NSPJ Architects, 9415 Nolan Prairie Village, Kansas. We've kind of been, you know, the journey on this started in last November. And we've obviously been meeting with not only the city staff, we've met with the fire department, we met with a lot of different people. And one of the things that was our governor is the 5-lot rule of a minor subdivision. Because if anyone decides to come along at some other point and say, hey, Russ, I'm going to go buy your lot and I'm going to divide it, we're out of that. And we're coming back in front of you going, we need to now be a major subdivision. And then all the rules that come with a major subdivision, which actually we can't because we don't have the second, we realistically don't have that second point of access because we're closed off along Corliss. We got a river on one side, we got an 80-foot bluff on the other side, and we got a highway on the other side. We even thought about there's this little squirrely way where you can go all the way down to the southeast corner and go underneath the rabbit hole underneath K10 and connect to like 103rd Street. We said, you guys probably weren't going to buy onto that one. That's a little bit of a stretch. And so realistically, the fact that this could be anything other than what is proposed right now would take a lot of huge endeavors way outside of our purview and ability to do so. And so I think, again, to respect with what they want to do as a family, it's not going to be a gravel road to the houses. They want to make sure that they can get fire department access. They want to be able to sure that they can get a fire truck on there. But one of the big things that a public street does is right-of-way and sidewalks and drainage ditches and all that stuff, and it completely destroys that approach that they want to have to these private homes. And that's why you kind of see the meandering of this easement is that they want to preserve as many of the natural, large, big, huge trees. And there's a lot of topography on the site. If they would have, you know, if you ever saw like the grading plan on this, there's a big, huge ravine that cuts up through the northwest corner of this site. On the very entire eastern end, you drop off into the river bottom. So there's kind of this little plateau that kind of cuts through just to the right or just to the left of the meandering. This is kind of little top area that kind of clears off that we're going to just plop 4 houses that are like a 100th the density of even the large lots that are to the west of us. We're like 0.01 percentage units per acre. So there's no density here. We're really limited by, if we put a 6 lot in, it's game off because there is no way to do that because we cannot be a regular major subdivision with the lack of access to anywhere else. You know, we'd have to there's just no way to get there. So I'll be available to any other questions if you do have them.
Thank you. And be clear, I'm not trying to make this any harder for you. I'm just not used to giving approval to a final plat with just the access easement as opposed to even identifying it as a private drive. It's just kind of weird to me. but maybe I'm out of line.
Well, it's unique. I don't think we've done it before. You know, the idea about allowing the private drive being under the council purview is why you have it. I mean, we just haven't had one of these before. So, you know, I don't, you know, it's, if the council approves it, it doesn't mean the council approves the plat. You approve the plat.
Well, that's what
So
I don't
that's
like,
still-
having the plat with the access
Yeah.
easement that hasn't been approved for a private drive. I mean, it's just like,
Sure.
it just seems like it's the cart before the horse, but
So I think my opinion on it, if it's a private drive and there's a problem with the drive, they have to fix it.
I get that.
It's not our problem. It's not the city's problem.
I'm just thinking of every other plat I've ever seen in any other city that has a private drive, calls that a private drive, not an access. And
No.
I've never seen that. I know there are access easements that are permitted, but where you've got one that's servicing 4 lots, I've never seen that not called out as a private drive. And maybe you know better than I do. I can't think of one that I've ever seen like that.
I think we'd be happy to call it a private drive. It's just staff's recommendation to use the access easement, so.
Well, I don't mean to throw them under the bus either.
Well,
I'm just,
If I could.
Well, I think they had some reason for it.
Yeah, the access easement really was just a terminology that we were using because we were talking about it's going to be a private road. And we certainly can change our recommendations to a private road or access easement or both. I don't want to get into the issue of semantics here, but ultimately our, I guess, sympathetic process for this was staff, we didn't see this area developing into anything else. There won't be any sewers or anything coming through here at any time that in the foreseeable future, especially on the east side of DeSoto. And it seemed like a reasonable request. I didn't want to get too hung up on the road itself, being that it's such a low density type development that didn't see there were going to be any issues with public safety issues or the water lines or things like that, since they were actually amenable to putting in an 8-inch line, the fire hydrants, all the things that felt, at least from a safety perspective, needed to be completed.
I'm just one guy complaining, and you guys all have votes.
But you pitch it.
I would say that I've seen a number of instances in my career where the future residents on a private access road are going to work hard to convince the city to make it public.
But that's usually the pattern.
Yeah.
Which that may never happen here, because there is no connector.
Well, but you
still.
know, the girls are gonna someday maybe wanna move or, and, so whoever else moves in there later might see it different.
Well, that certainly would take a council action later to accept that road. And we do have a few private roads that have come up in DeSoto, and they've gone absolutely nowhere with, well, first of all, getting past city staff, but city council is not.
I mean, it's kind of related like a detention basin. So, I mean, all the lot owners have to maintain that detention basin. Why can't we just do the same thing with the access road? I mean, it's the same, they have to maintain it.
I think it's great. I just have nothing on this plat that says that.
Okay, well, we just add the
And I
language.
also don't have anything on this plat that describes what this road's gotta be or anything else. And so it's gonna be up to the council to decide all those things. And I'm just used to seeing a final plat where you actually have it drawn up and it has a reference to an access agreement or easement agreement or something that establishes what that is.
Well, I think moving forward, Mr. Chairman, you could put that part of your motion or to accept, and we'll carry that forward to the council that the planning commission had this concern about road access and a more definitive description of the road maintenance, installation, et cetera. But we do have, I mean, Joe's looked at the plans that they've talked about as far as cross sections, things like that. And while he's not given his final approval on it, we kind of have a tentative agreement with the applicant on what would be constructed.
So I mean, it'd be something like the owners of lots 1 through 5 must maintain the access road over the platted easement.
Sure.
Is that inclusive of the hydrants? I don't know that there's a lot of maintenance there, but I would assume so.
The water line would be placed in a public water main easement.
Okay.
So that would be, we're proposing that be a public line.
So the access agreement's gonna have to include access for public utilities.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good item to have on the plat as well, Commissioner Huggins.
I got a proposed motion.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I would move to accept the final plat for, and it's Gaudium, right?
Yes.
IUM.
Yes, it ends in an M. Part of, I did
States-
misspell it in the
No worries.
line item.
As a minor subdivision, subject to city council accepting the easements depicted on the plat and an agreement related to the access easement on terms acceptable to council.
I can second
That cover all your bases?
Yes, I'm comfortable with that.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? Roll call?
Milburn,
Yes.
Maddock,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Templin,
Yes.
Huggins,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
That concludes our agenda. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
If I could take one moment for a public gripe. Next time we do something like this, there should be a process. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's something we think about because we're gonna see private drives again. And I think we need to have some mechanism to deal with that other than just, it's okay if council says it's okay. Because that's a problem, and it's a problem in a lot of communities. I've run into that several times in various different cities, and so,
Just
into
FYI.
public gripe.
Thank you guys for sitting through the entire meeting.
Thank you.
All part of, thank you very much, everybody.
So also, can I have a request as well? I don't want to put more work on staff, but on every agenda item, can we have a recommendation that we can just read for approval or
I've thought
denial?
about doing that several times, except through the course of a lot of our discussions, what I would write, if something comes up like we talked about tonight, where you have to redo it anyway,
Yeah.
so.
We can always make an amendment, but with the technicalities
If
in
you
there, it would
prefer, I
make it
can at least
easier.
It would-
Put one in there.
It would be great,
Okay.
because then we can work for that as a
Yeah.
starting point. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the more hot topic items, it'd be nice to be able to say, okay, this is what we have to say.
We might be
Well,
more
I guess
apt
here's
to
a, for
voice
instance,
that,
I
right?
mean, the rezoning application was denied. My motion would have been to approve.
Okay, so
But that's okay.
You all have to craft that.
We can, but I think having some language to
The
start with.
technicalities in
So
there.
other cities, they have two.
Or three. Some of them have
So you still have your
Okay.
recommendation.
Start with one.
Well, no, so you still have your recommendation, but then there's others that you just say, okay, if planning commission, if you wanna make this motion, X. If you wanna make this motion, it's Y. But you still have staff recommends approval. But if we wanna deny,
I mean, I personally, when I'm the one not making the motion, I think it's entertaining to watch all of us. However,
Stutter around and try to get it right.
yeah. But when I'm the one making the recommendation, it's
gotta
like, oh
watch
my
it.
God, everybody's watching me. If I step on my own tongue, it's a bad news.
we do have legal counsel that's watching over this right now.
Yeah.
So if I can just jump in and comment, sorry. So if you're gonna agree with staff's recommendation, it's easy, just motion to approve, because the staff memo addresses all the criteria. Of course, if you disagree, probably call that out, but it's where you're going opposite of staff's recommendation that we really need to have, the reasons, so.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Brett, you don't generally bring things in front of us that you're not in favor of because you kick it back to the applicant beforehand to rework it, right?
Correct, yes.
Hope so. I mean, that's what, we
Yeah, that's
want
the
to
whole
empower
point.
you.
All
to do that.
right, like this Guardian Estates, like you mentioned, we started in November talking about this because it was a strange
Yeah.
kind of out-of-the-box thing
Yeah.
that none of us have really dealt with at a
So-
significant level.
To Commissioner Milburn's point, if we need to agree with staff, that's pretty easy. I think we can all get ourselves through that, but when we have when we don't want to agree with staff is where I generally get tripped up, for the most part.
Or if we kind of agree,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's a couple of items that
Yeah.
we actually did.
Well, it would be nice to have some template to work from, and,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
we can
other-
do that.
Other cities
And
do
you
that,
can-
and
yeah,
maybe
we'll
you
leave
can-
it,
Just-
motion to deny based on, and then
for the
you just
following
fill in the
reasons,
blanks.
colon, and
Yeah.
we can
Yeah,
fill that in.
yeah, that would be helpful, even if it's an addendum to the back of the packet or something.
Okay, certainly can add that.
Well, I wasn't done with my public griping, I have another one.
No,
Can we put on the agenda the names of the applicants? That would really help.
okay, yeah, sure.
Just in terms of browsing through it, because I looked through that first and was like, well, hell, I might represent some of these people, I don't know, and I had to go through and figure out who are the applicants were. So,
Well,
at least having the name of the applicant, I think
yeah,
would be
well,
helpful.
sometimes they have their consulting engineer or somebody they're working with is the applicant.
Even though it may not be clear,
not the
something
owner,
would be better
so-
than nothing.
All very reasonable requests.
I'm sure
by
that's
the
not true.
commissioners. We can accommodate.
Thrilled
Yes.
to have help you with.
Thank
that.
you very much, Brad. Today was action packed, so.
It was
Okay,
interesting.
yeah. Any other public complaints, or shall we adjourn?
It was a recommendation.
Yeah, second.
Moved and seconded? Stand adjourned. Okay.
This conference is no